The information provided in this episode is not intended to be medical advice. Please contact your medical professional immediately if you have concerns and questions in regards to the health and wellness of your ostomy or overall health. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Me Plus Talk, an ostomy podcast brought to you by Comatech. As always, this is Matt Deal, an ostomy product specialist.
And this is Renee. As always, I'm one of the certified wound ostomy nurses here at Convatec. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about support and resources for people living with an ostomy. From ostomy nurses to local support groups and even engaging online safely.
Right. And we're also very excited to have a special guest with us here today, Allison Rosen. Allison's story is incredible, from colorectal cancer in her 30s to emergency surgery and now living with an ostomy and working to ensure people get screened for cancer regularly. She's a great patient advocate. Welcome, Allison. We're so happy to have you.
Yes, welcome, Allison. I'm sorry.
I'm so excited to be here. I cut you off.
No, it's fine. That's what we're here to do. We're here to talk.
That's it.
So, Allison, if you could just start off a little bit, tell us a little bit about yourself and your story.
Sure. So my story starts in 2012. I actually was working in cancer research. I work in the Texas Medical Center in Houston, and I, just like everybody else, sort of was going through, living my life, having the time of my life. I love to work out. I love animals. I love traveling. And I was doing all that, but it started around, I want to say May, March, April, May. I started noticing differences in sort of my bowel habits. I started noticing, I thought I was losing weight because I was doing Zumba all the time, but I was losing weight. My bowel habits changed. I saw blood in the stool. I felt more fatigued than normal, so I was definitely anemic. Started having all these symptoms, and I actually have Crohn's disease, so I'm very familiar with my body and what things are supposed to be like. It felt like at one point that food was stuck in me. And so when I ate, I was just like, this is just not normal, heartburn that I never used to get. And so it had been a year since I'd had a colonoscopy. And the last colonoscopy I had was probably the cleanest one I've had my whole life. And so I was due for that. I had one scheduled for 3 months from sort of when all this sort of stuff happened. And so I reached out to my GI doctor and I said, okay, something's going on. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I just don't feel right. I told her what was going on. And so she did an x-ray and she thought I actually had a blockage. So she gave me something to drink. And for maybe a few hours, I felt a little bit better. But that same sort of feeling that like food was stuck in me and the pain that I was having and bloating was still there. And so we decided to schedule my colonoscopy for that next week. So that next week, I go and do the prep for my colonoscopy, just like, everybody does. And I remember waking up from that colonoscopy and she said, well, I found something. There's something growing in your colon. I don't quite know what it is. I don't think it's cancer, but we're going to biopsy and I'll let you know in 2 days. So
Wow.
like cancer.
Oh my gosh. And how old were you at this time?
I was 32.
32.
Mm.
Wow.
So I thought, being the sort of knowledgeable person about cancer, that colon cancer only happened in people old. I really thought it was 50 and above because that's what the screening is just overall for average risk populations. But so I never thought I would be at risk, and I was being monitored on a regular basis. And it wasn't until I was like, okay, something's not right, that we decided to schedule that colonoscopy a little bit earlier. And so, yeah, at 32, I had that. I heard the word cancer, and then I get the call to come to her office. She had never had me come to her office. And so I knew at that moment that my life was going to be changed forever. And so I walked over there with my phone, crying with my mom, because I knew that that was what was going to happen. And so I was diagnosed with cancer on June 7th of 2012 at the age of 32. And I think that that day is ingrained in my mind. I will always celebrate that day because I'm alive now. I'm 7 years cancer free. but that year of treatment and surgeries and everything really has changed my life and my perspective and guided me to sort of where I am today. And a big part of that is my ostomy. And I don't know if some people know if they've read anything about me, but if they haven't, my ostomy's name is Phil.
Okay. Phil, nice.
Fill.
Okay.
And
Oh, I love it.
I had a group of young adult survivors help me name it. So I think as someone, I mean, to back up a little bit, I think I went into my surgeon's office with this preconceived notion that a lot of people probably have. I don't know really what an ostomy is. I don't really want anything external. I don't want people to even know that I had cancer after I did. And so when he sort of explained a little bit more about it, I was like, well, if you have to do the surgery to give me a permanent one, do it. But if you don't have to, then please do that. Because,
Right.
You're young, and for me, body image is huge. And so the initial surgery I had was to take part of my colon out, give me a temporary ileostomy. Actually, they had to take the whole colon out because my Crohn's was so bad. So they were able still to connect what was left to my rectum. And so I had an internal J pouch for a while. And I had that temporary ileostomy, which for me was difficult to deal with, only because I was in so much pain. I'd never had major surgery before. And so luckily at MD Anderson, where I was treated, they have an ostomy nurse. They have an ostomy clinic. And I know there's not access to that to everybody, but it was life-changing. Like, the ostomy nurses there knew me by first name because I went there every single day until I found a bag appliance bag, whatever you want to call it, that worked for me.
Right.
Not only did I go to that clinic, but I also called all the companies and I was like, help me.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Right.
I need help. And I think I was told that 99% of the time it's an ostomy nurse or someone that has experience with an ostomy or has one of their own that answers those phone calls. Because, I think even if you have 3 ostomy nurse visits, you still are, I mean, I was doped up on pain meds. I'm not gonna lie. I was
Right.
not fully lucid sometimes
Exactly.
when I was getting that training. And so the support that you need after is so important.
Right.
And
So if I could ask you kind of along those lines, it sounds like it was such a traumatic time in your life. They were amazing. I feel like from what you described, it sounds like they're a big part of the reason why it was successful, you managing your ostomy and so forth. So could you just tell me a little bit about your mindset going through that and, before you found those ostomy nurses and what you were thinking, living life with an ostomy, what am I going to do? Renee, I'm sure you can attest to this. So many customers we speak with, we're in that same exact position and have no idea where to go. So if you could just walk me through, what your mindset was, your strategy or your goals to reach out and find resources.
Allison, let me tag something onto that before you answer him. Add into that where this drive to be such an advocate for yourself comes from, if you can, because you did the one thing that most people don't realize they need to do, and that is to do a lot of research for themselves to find what's going to work for them. And you sounded like you were perfect at that. So where does all that come from as well?
I mean, I have always been a learner. Working in a lab, you're constantly learning. And I think knowledge is power. And I think the best thing anyone can do for themselves, no matter what health condition they have, is to learn as much as possible so that you're educated. I mean, I have people that my dad's a healthcare professional. I work in healthcare, but you have to really, you can trust your doctors and physicians. But I think that if you can come with the right questions, then you're more comfortable for dealing with whatever sort of side effects or problems that might arise. Because no procedure, no surgery is doom, done, checked off. It's nothing is necessarily by the book. And so the more you can prepare yourself and be knowledgeable and talk to as many people as you possibly can, the better I think you are suited to handle it physically, but also mentally. So, I think that's sort of the drive. I've always been that person, but I think even more so with something that I was not at all knowledgeable about at all. It really helped me just to learn from others, learn from people that actually knew. The internet can be crazy at times. So
Right.
you have to find a source that is knowledgeable and can give you the right answers.
Now,
Right.
with this journey that you started, how has that changed you for your future from that point on? Did it change your career? Did it help you get involved in other ways and in other areas?
Yeah, 100%. So cancer research is so important. But I think throughout my cancer journey, when I was reaching out for support and to talk to other people, I realized that my voice and my story mattered. And so I got involved at MD Anderson, and they were starting a young adult advisory council to help with other adolescent young adult patients. And that's 18 to 39 is when you're considered an adolescent young adult cancer patient.
Right.
And so by joining that council and by getting involved, they have something else called Cancer 180, a Facebook page that literally is just dedicated to, again, adolescent and young adults. And they post stories, they post research, you can reach out and talk to people and have support. I think that once I realized that it helped so much, it changed my whole perspective when I talked to someone like me. And the first person I talked to wasn't young. It was someone else that had an ostomy that was older, but they just helped guide me and made me feel so much more comfortable that I realized that I couldn't really, the understanding that your a support system and your caregivers have is amazing, but no one can really understand you fully unless they've experienced what you have gone through. And so once I found that community, I didn't want to leave, and I still haven't left 8 years later. It drove me to do more, to help more, and to advocate. And so my whole career path has changed. So I work in cancer prevention. And so I work and educate the underserved, uninsured populations, and educate them about cancer screening and the importance of cancer screening and how that can save your life. And so I get to use my story to sort of be an example to not only the community, but providers that work in the healthcare system to understand the importance of cancer and screening. And I think it also has led me to be, I got help, so I wanted to help in return. So
Right.
MD Anderson has a ostomy support team. So whenever they have a patient that has even a temporary, colostomy or ileostomy, if they want to talk to someone else, I go into the hospital. I mean, due to COVID times, you can't go right now.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I either go in the hospital or I call them, and I specifically, I tell my story a little bit, and then I ask, I walk in when I go into that room, usually wearing a dress, maybe, tighter pants with maybe a tighter top, because those questions were what I had when I first
Right.
got my ostomy. Can you wear normal clothes?
Right.
I mean, that was huge for me. I'm like, will people know I have this ostomy? Will I smell? All these questions that I had.
Sure.
I sit in that patient's room for anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, however long they need me, just to be that ear that understands
Right.
and listens.
I love that you made those points, because it is every single day. That's the questions we get from our customers that call into the Me Plus team, and it's a big concern, and rightfully so. To highlight kind of both of those points that you had mentioned about your local support group or ostomy clinic, but also tying back a little bit about your story. I know that you had mentioned, or reading your story, you said that there was about a 2-year time frame that you had your ileostomy and you were debating on whether to make it permanent. So if you could, highlighting the support groups, where at that time, were you involved with support groups? Were you involved with an ostomy clinic? Did they help influence that decision? What did that time frame look like for you to bite the bullet and say, you know what, let's make this permanent, and let's, this is me, let's own it?
I think the year of living with a J pouch was probably the toughest year for me. I was in the hospital with pouchitis, infection after, I was just in the hospital, infection after infection. I think even the anxiety to go on a road trip, to be able to eat and go on a road trip and not have to worry about where a restroom was. My life felt like it was halted in the way that I didn't want it to be. I'm so active. I travel all the time. Like I said, I just have a lot of energy. And so I go on road trips, sitting in a car for 3 hours, not being able to eat or drink, knowing that for me personally, this is not everybody, but for me, after 30 minutes of eating or drinking, I had to go to the bathroom. And if I didn't get there soon, I would have an accident. And that's crazy to talk about because, you know, I had to wear adult diapers at one point when I was going through my treatment. And I think that year experience with having that J pouch, and there was an emergency surgery that resulted in the temporary ileostomy. I had abdominal pain, and unfortunately my colon was punctured. And so it was sort of like, okay, I have to have this emergency surgery. And that was not at MD Anderson. I'll caveat that and say, I'm not going to say what hospital that was at, but it was not at MD Anderson. But it happened that I had to have that ileostomy temporarily again for my insides to heal. And in that 2-year period is when I went on a trip with young adults that helped me name that ileostomy that I talked about. So I think that they helped me realize that scars and something like an ostomy really, that doesn't necessarily define you. It just helps give you that quality of life that you want. And so I lived life so fully, traveled. My brother lived in Japan. I was able to travel to Japan to visit him. I went surfing, rock climbing, skydiving. I mean, I did all of these things. And then I had an honest conversation with my doctor. And so we sat down and I was like, can it be reversed? Can it be reversed? Like, let's have this conversation. I want to know. I don't want to delay the inevitable. And so he said, listen, you know, we can reverse it, but you're going to go back to that constant, you know, going to the bathroom a lot. Your bowels, you know, might be uncontrollable. It just was where my tumor was. It was at the very bottom of the colon near the rectum. So essentially I say I had colorectal cancer. So I think that based on where my tumor was and based on how badly the J pouch was for me, the only decision for me to make was to have that ileostomy made permanent. Also, I didn't want to have cancer again. So to reduce the risk of having cancer, the best thing for me was to have where that J pouch was and down, everything taken out. And they call it a Barbie butt. So I had that Barbie butt, you know, surgery. And it was, I mean, I tell people it was the best decision I ever made because it was. I literally, you know, like I said, my life changed for the better. And I know that with, you know, having that final surgery that I'm not at risk for a recurrence. So that releases some of the anxiety with me. And I've just continued to, I guess, advocate and educate because I didn't know enough about an ostomy. Now, I might have had that ostomy surgery that first time. So if I had known a little bit more. And so there wasn't as much support. Me Plus program wasn't around then. Or if it was, I think it was at its infancy. So reading stories on Me Plus and, you know, my ostomy support group that's local that we can talk about a little bit more, between that, talking to other people and reading reputable sources, it just was a no-brainer for me. And I want to dispel any rumor that people might have that ostomies are disgusting, that they smell, that you're any lesser of a person if you have them, because I don't think I'm any of those. I definitely don't smell.
I agree.
I said I've asked people to you know, to smell me just in case, but you know, I think that no one knows that I have one unless I tell them.
Right.
And
you know, I love that point. I've mentioned it so many times. I think I've said it on the podcast, but you know, I tell everyone that just had their ostomy, I've just said, before you had your surgery, when you walk down the street, have you ever noticed one? And I don't think anybody's ever told me, yes, I've noticed one. They haven't. So it just goes to prove the point that you can do anything you did before with no concerns, you know, the same clothing. I love the point that you make because that's something we get so frequently. But yes, I mean, it's just live your life. I love that you mentioned you went skydiving, you went surfing. I mean, that's incredible to think about. You have a pouch right there. I mean, and there's no concern whatsoever, no issues. That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I haven't even done skydiving and I don't have an ostomy.
Right? I love it.
I had a group of a young adult survivor friend. It was National Cancer Survivor Day. And so we always celebrate life. You have to celebrate life. It's just so precious now. And so she asked if I wanted to go. And I'm like, well, I will try anything once. And you can quote me on that. I will try anything once. And so I was like, I will try it. I will do it. I asked my doctor if it was okay, obviously. And they said, yeah, it's okay. and I did it. It was fun. I probably would not go again. Not necessarily my thing. Surfing I'll do any day.
Fair enough.
Skydiving, but it was really empowering to
Right.
do that, and sort of people have asked me questions about all of those activities that I've done, and I tell them that you exactly what you said. You can do anything. You might have to do something in a different way, but you can
Right.
do anything.
Perfect.
Good,
Perfect.
good one.
Now, you have mentioned several times about the support groups. If someone who's listening to this is just now starting their journey of living with an ostomy, how can they go about finding a support group or getting involved with one? What would you recommend?
So online can be a good and a bad tool. My first place to start, my mom's dentist happened to have an ostomy. So they told my mom about the United Ostomy Association of America. So they have a website. I think it's ostomy.org. You go there and you can find a local support group. In Houston, where I am, there are 4 support groups.
Wow.
So Houston's huge, so it makes sense. East, north, south, east, west.
Right.
But you can go on there, find a local support group, and I'm not gonna lie, there's not a lot of young people in these support groups. But that didn't matter to me, because these people that have had an ostomy for 20, 30, 40 years have so much knowledge that they have taught me so many lessons, and they're so welcoming. They're like, ooh, somebody young, yay, come. So United Ostomy Association, looking that up, it's United Ostomy Association of Texas is what I have here. But look up on their website. That was sort of one way that I got support. Another one was, I'm active on social media. I'm very active on social media. So I went to Facebook to look things up. So specific for colorectal cancer, there's 2 online sort of communities. One's called Colon Town, and they have different neighborhoods based on your diagnosis. They have a specific neighborhood just for ostomies, where you can ask other people that have ostomies questions, and they have a moderator.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
so you have to fill out this form. You can't, and not anyone can get in. So you're not going to have some random person stalking you and saying all sorts of weird stuff. Then there also is another online group called Blue Hope Nation. The Blue Hope Nation is through a group called the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and that is it's a big group of colorectal cancer survivors, patients, healthcare providers, where you again can write your story and get support. They're moving to an online platform, so I think that slowly is rolling out, and I'm going to be the moderator for their ostomy group. And so I don't know if it's actually released yet, but it's called Ally to Ally, and so eventually that will be there. So very similar. If you're not on Facebook, this is another avenue to get on through the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, their sort of platform. And then there are groups on Facebook. I just Googled ileostomy, colostomy, ostomy, and I looked for those groups that actually ask questions. You don't want to just be like, okay, I'm going into this group, because you never know who creates that. So if there's one that has a good moderator and actually asks questions, do you have an ostomy? The sort of the filter questions. Those groups are the ones that I choose, then I think that are sort of more safe for that. And then also, I think depending on what, why you have an ostomy, I know that if you have it from Crohn's or colitis, CCFA, Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, they have support groups as well. Yep. I went to one when I was younger, and I'm sure, I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure they have tons of ostomates through that as well. So, I mean, I just look for reputable sources. I think locally in Houston, and I don't know if I can say this or not, but I assume I can. Locally in Houston, I helped start a young adult support group, and it's for all young adults with cancer. And I've met a lot of ostomates through that. And it's at a place called Dance House of Hope that provides free housing for young adults that are going through cancer in the Houston area. And so it's where I go now virtually, but even before, once a month or every 2 weeks, to just talk to people that get it. And I think that's the overall message of support. You're not in this alone.
Right.
There are others that understand, that can help you, be it an ostomy nurse on the other line on the phone from Convatec, or an ostomate like myself that has it. Right. people understand and want to be there for you and help you, because it is a change. It's something you're not necessarily used to. And there are issues that come up. It took me, I don't know how many times to find the right appliance for me. And it changed. I had 3 different, temporary ileostomies. It changed each time.
Right.
And so I think that there is so much support out there. And
Of course.
you're not alone. You are not alone in this journey.
Yeah. And that's what we try to tell our customers every single day. We're here. There's so many people just like yourself, Allison. And to that point, I would love to just find out from your younger self, you just had this done, going through all of that you did, trials and tribulations. What advice could you give to someone that is younger, just maybe having surgery soon or just had surgery? What immediate advice would you give that person to start their journey and to live in their life? And, obviously you've talked a lot about finding the support groups, things of that nature, but just mentally or anything of that nature, could you give any advice specifically to someone younger living with an ostomy?
I think patience is
Right.
key.
Right.
I said this, I tried until I found the right appliance for me. There's so many options. It can be overwhelming, but if you're patient with yourself and the others that are helping you along with your ostomy journey, you will find what works perfectly for you that will allow you to live your best life. And I think for me, I was like, okay, I need to find something. I need to find something now. I need to figure this out tomorrow. But you got to be kind with yourself. And if you're patient and you figure out what works best, then mentally and physically, it will be so much better. And I also think along with that, you just said mental health. I asked to see a psychologist when I was first diagnosed. So I still see that same psychologist now, again,
Really?
8 years later, because she just gets me. Once you have, cancer and or just something life-changing like an ostomy, the support that you might need to deal with all sorts of issues that might come up doesn't end once, treatment for whatever disease you have might end.
Right.
So I really it's crazy because I knew that I needed to talk to somebody. So new people that are listening to this, realize that talking to somebody else that is a perfect stranger can change your life and make it so much better.
Right.
One of the things that I hear a lot is how appreciative people are that they can call in to like Convatec and talk to a certified ostomy nurse, because that's a rarity in a lot of worlds. Like you were talking about, MD Anderson has the ostomy clinic, and there's a lot of larger facilities that have that available, but most people aren't at those larger facilities. So if y'all don't mind, I'm going to take a second and pat myself on the back that I'm a part of a group that are extremely happy to answer any questions. We send out samples. We help any way we can. Matt knows what we do every day and how many people we talk to every day, and we're here for you. So to Allison's point, you're never going to be alone. You can always contact us here, and that number is 1-800-422-8811. And just, whoever answers the phone, more than likely it's going to be an ostomy nurse, but if not, then whoever can help you, and we'll be happy to. But even how do I find an ostomy nurse locally is a lot of questions that I get. Is a question that I get a lot. And a local ostomy nurse may or may not be available. In a small community where I live, I'm the only one, and unfortunately I'm not available to the community because of what I do. So it's, again, online support, a support group in itself may be close but not quite in your area, but look for it. Do that research like Allison did. Find out who can help you. And if you need just to talk to someone, again, the ostomy nurses here at Convatec are always going to be available. I want to make one point real quick that hasn't been mentioned. We have a group that we support here at Convatec. It's called Youth Rally. We actually sponsor it every year, and it's for children that have ostomy. So if you know someone or if a family member has an ostomy and they're from, very young age, 4 or 5 years old, up to 18. Then Youth Rally is something that you can go online and check out, youthrally.com. And that too can help the children out in your life. So let them know that there's something available, and it's a camp. We do it virtually now because of the way the world is, but hopefully one day we're going to get back to face in different cities. So I just wanted to add that in as well.
Right.
A little tidbit real quick. I called you guys when I first got my ostomy, and someone told me about the magic of marshmallows.
Right.
Yes.
Life changing, and I tell
Right.
everyone that I talk to about marshmallows, bananas, like just applesauce. And I know y'all have a lot of information about diet, so we don't need to talk about that, but it was someone on the other line, who knows, maybe it was you, but someone answered that line and talked to me about what I could eat, because it was a constant struggle. So thank you for all you do.
Yeah. I love that you make that point, because it's so neat. We love sharing those little tips and tricks, little things. Snapping a two-piece flange together. If you dip your finger in water and run it along the flange, it makes it easier. Those little things are the resources this whole podcast is about. We can't, mention enough the Me Plus team. We're here to relay the little tips and tricks that Allison's discovered over time, that Renee's discovered over time. Those are the things that are invaluable, that improve your quality of life. And that's what we love sharing. So I love that you brought that up, because the marshmallow is the number one thing that I think we mentioned on the Me Plus team.
It really is. But there is another opportunity that just occurred to me that I haven't mentioned yet. We here at Convatec are partnering with another company that can do a virtual visit. So if you are in a position where you don't have an ostomy nurse available, but you really want somebody to look at the skin and how you change it and give you tips and tricks, as Matt just said, then give us a call. We'll talk to you in more detail about it, but it actually is a virtual visit that a nurse, a certified ostomy nurse, can look at your stoma and help you and answer your questions and get those samples out if you need it, and hopefully change your world. So just let us know what we can do to help on that end.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that I get that information so that I can pass it on to all of the people that I talk to that are newly diagnosed or have ostomies for the first time.
Right. One thing that I did want to discuss real quick before we wrap this episode up was just engaging online safely. As we all know, the internet is a great resource with an enormous amount of information on, maintenance for your ostomy, product reviews, advice, et cetera, et cetera. But with that being said, I think it's very important just to point out that we should all take that information with a grain of salt. We've mentioned it on this podcast so many times, but everyone's body's different, everyone's stoma is different. So before, you move forward with anything that you're unsure about, make sure you reach out to the Me Plus team. Let us advise you. I'm a product specialist. I would love to talk to you about products. Renee can definitely talk to you about products, your stoma, everything that you need to. So just make sure that anything that you read online, take it with a grain of salt. Reach out to the Me Plus team. Get those answers you need. We're here to help, just to help improve your quality of life, like I said.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, this has been phenomenal. This has been, I think right now to this point, this may be my favorite podcast we've done. Any final thoughts, Allison?
I think that, if you look at me, you would have no idea I had cancer. You'd have no idea I have an ostomy. You'd have no idea that, that underneath this are scars. And I think that, to anyone listening, we already said you're not alone, but whatever you're feeling, I might be very positive. I'm a very positive person, but also it's okay to cry and to be upset. But we're talking about support. Reach out for that support when you are emotional or just need help. I think that's sort of the last message I want to send everybody.
Well, that's a great message to end with.
It is so important. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, as always, if you have any specific questions about anything, your ostomy, support groups, the Me Plus team, we're here to help. So again, I'm going to give you that number. It's 1-800-422-8811. And we answer questions, we send out samples, we get you over with a virtual nurse so that if you need that help, we can help with that. Again, 1-800-422-8811. Thank you, Allison, so much. You have been such a joy, and we
Yes,
really
thank you,
appreciate you
Allison.
joining us today.
Love
Thank you so much for having me. I just want to help others, so being able to do it through this is amazing.
I love it. Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you, everyone, for listening, watching. We're excited to continue doing this going forward in the future. Stay tuned for the next episode. Maybe we'll have Allison back here in the future and get some more info from her. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is Matt.
And this is Renee.
Have a great
Have
day.
a great day.
Me Plus Services and Care from Convatec brings you tools and advice to help make life with an ostomy completely your own. The products and support you need, the tips and advice you can learn to use, and a community you can grow with. Enroll in Me Plus today by calling 1-800-422-8811 or log on to mepluscare.com. That's mepluscare.com.